speak Chinese?
Do I speak Chinese? No. I grew up in a Cantonese-speaking family, and I can understand a little bit food. I studied Mandarin for a while, and I did temporarily get pretty good, but the minute I stopped studying it, it went right out of my head. When I go to China, in the big cities, you don't really need a translator, but in the countryside, you need to have someone who knows that very particular dialect, like what you were talking about. So, for example, with Snowflower and the Secret Fan, I was walking from village to village. These villages were a half a mile apart. What is that, a 10-minute, a 20-minute walk. Even today, the dialect changes from village to village, just 10 minutes away. The written language of Chinese is standard. It doesn't matter if it's Cantonese or Mandarin or any of these other little dialects. So people would spend a lot of time just writing on their palms with their finger, do you mean this character or this character? And that's something you see in China much more now because it's a much more fluid society and people are moving around much more than they used to. Yes?
Have you ever traveled back with family that's been here for a while who refused for so long to go back to see it from their perspective?
Have I ever traveled back with family that refused to go back and didn't see it from their perspective? No.
They still have no desire to?
No, they've all gone, but I just haven't gone with them. A lot of them have gone, and they've gone back to the home village. I mean, the home village, Dim Tao is our home village. Everybody there we're related to. So, I mean, they're all relatives, and they're all Fongs. And so, yes, we've seen them and still have family there. And it's an odd thing when you go, and even if you're from Europe and you go back to the place that your great-grandparents were from or whatever, and there are these moments where you think, okay, there but for the grace of God. It's just that sense of if I hadn't had someone in my family, or you hadn't had someone in your family who was brave enough, scared enough, dumb enough to leave their home country to come here, and what that takes, and what different lives we would have had if we had stayed in Poland or Guatemala or China or wherever. Yes?
Have you incurred any hostility with family back there because you're not 100% Chinese?
Have I ever had any hostility from the family in China because I'm not 100% Chinese? Actually, can I just answer first about this country? So when I was working on Gold Mountain, I just always thought I was part of the family, but when I was going out and interviewing people, there were several people who said to me, oh, you should go talk to so-and-so, he's Caucasian like you. Like they were letting me in on a secret, but also they really were letting me in on a secret because they had never let me feel like I was different, even though obviously I did look different, but somehow I was so self-deluded I didn't really see myself in the mirror, because what is your mirror? I mean, how do you identify yourself? It's the people you see around you. They're your mirror. And so what I saw around me were all these Chinese faces. That's what I thought I was like. Didn't occur to me that I was different. So when I go to China, I think I've never had any hostility, actually, ever. And just really instead people wanting to tell me their stories. There's nothing like telling your story to someone you're never ever going to see again. It's just great because everybody wants to tell their story. But if you're never going to see them, it's just, okay, I'm going to tell it all. But I've never had anything like that. And I think sometimes people are kind of alarmed that I have this background. But, what I remember even when that first time when I went to the home village, and clearly, I didn't look like everyone else, except that within a day, the women would come up to me and they would, they'd go shoulder to shoulder, hip to hip, knee to knee, that we had the exact same proportions, you might find this hard to believe, but actually I have the same jaw, the same eyes, the same cheekbones. It's like we're like cookie cutters, really. In our family, it had very strong genes, but I just have different coloring.
Excuse me. I'm may sound stupid, but what part of you is Chinese?
This part down here. I'm an eighth Chinese.
Eighth Chinese.
Yes, but in Los Angeles I have about 400 relatives. There are about a dozen that look like me. The majority are still full Chinese, and then a spectrum in between. Okay, how about one more question or two more questions? Oh, that's like a way to intimidate people.
I have a question.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
When you decided that you were going to write about sisters, did you know that themes of racism and classism were going to play such a large part of the story?
When I knew that I was going to write about sisters, did I know that racism and classism would play such a big part of the story? Yeah, I did. I really did. Yeah. I mean, does it need to be longer than yeah? Yeah, okay, yeah. Anyone had a question?
Your stories feature a lot of, I guess, women with this beautiful kind of sacrificial love for each other. And do you have something like that, or do you draw from any experience that you have?
We should have stopped with this question. Okay, so the women in these books often have a kind of beautiful sacrificial love for each other. And do I have anyone in my life that's like that I would do that for? I'll have to think about that. How much of a sacrifice do I have to give? Yeah, you know, I think my sisters, actually, I would. And I'm very, very close to my mother. You know, my mother and my sister Clara, they are my closest friends. They're the ones that I lived with growing up, and definitely. But I have other friends that I wouldn't be able to write the books I write if I hadn't had these kinds of friendships and relationships. I wouldn't be able to write them. Thank you all so much. Oh,